Hi, this is Chapter 1, Lesson 1 on ratios and proportional reasoning. We are going to be working out of the green textbooks that you have on pages 9 through 12. So what we're going to do first is, and I want you guys to copy this part down, is what we will learn, or we will learn, two things. We're going to learn how to find a unit rate, and we're also going to learn how to compare quantities using unit rates. Now, we've already done this in a previous chapter when we were working out of our sixth grade books, so you'll see a lot of this is repetitive, and it should come pretty easy to you, and hopefully this lesson will be nothing more but a reminder. All right, so now look at the following screen here. So we're on the next page, page 10 in your books. It says here a ratio, so we have to review like what ratios and rates are. A ratio is something that compares two quantities. So it's a number that compares two different things, which means you have to have two numbers. And when it has different kinds of units, it's called a rate. So let me review with you guys. If you remember what a ratio was, is it compares two different types of numbers. And the first example talks about 160 to the 2. So that would be a ratio. However, because our units of measurement, so in this case, it's the word beats and then the word minutes, because they're not the same, then we call this a rate. So on this one here, we're comparing 160 beats of your pulse every 2 minutes. Look at the second part. It says when a rate is simplified so that it has a denominator of 1 unit, it is called a unit rate. So go ahead and write down the definitions in your notebook. So what a rate is a ratio that compares two quantities with different units. And what a unit rate is a simplified rate that has a denominator of 1. So basically you're telling me how much for 1. Now on this next part, the table shows some common unit rates. You don't have to copy this part down, but it's important that you do take the time to review it, especially before a quiz or a test. When you're looking at the first one where it says number of miles in 1 hour, that's basically saying miles per hour, and you can see that right over here. And the abbreviation for it is MI, which is the real abbreviation for miles / hours, or MPH. And you'll see this on speed limit signs. It'll say MPH on those. The next, and that has to do with average speed. The next one is the number of miles for 1 gallon. So it's how many miles per gallon. And you can see how that's written like that, MI/gal or MPG. And then it talks about gas mileage. Like, for example, how much, a lot of people talk about vehicles and what their gas mileage is, because larger vehicles end up using more gas, and gas is very expensive. So this is really important when you're shopping for cars. You want to make sure you're getting a vehicle that doesn't, that you get good gas mileage for, meaning like if you were to put 1 gallon of gas in it, can you travel 10 miles on that 1 gallon of gas, or can you travel 30 miles on that 1 gallon of gas? And then the last one listed is the number of dollars per pound, so it's the price per pound. And this has to do when you go to the grocery store and you're buying fruit. You know how they always measure it, like how many pounds of fruit it is, because a lot of times you'll pay like $1.99 per pound. And so they do weigh it and they multiply by however heavy that is. And that's dollars per pound, so there's not really a letter abbreviation for that. But when you do that, we're talking about unit price. All right, so let's go ahead and look at number 1. It says Adrienne biked 24 miles in 4 hours. If she biked at a constant speed, how many miles does she ride in 1 hour? So on this one here, the first thing you're going to do is you see it right there in your problem where she biked 24 miles in 4 hours. That right there, you guys, is your rate. So you would simply write it as a fraction using the units of measurement. You have to have the words in order for it to be considered a rate, or it would then be a ratio. So you can see how they did 24 miles over 4 hours. Well, what you're going to do then is, because it's asking you how many does she ride in 1 hour, they want a unit rate. You're going to sit there and look at the 24 and the 4 and divide it by 4, because you want your denominator to have to be a 1. So you get 6 miles over 1 hour. So you could leave it as this one right here that I just put a second box around, or in something like this, you could also write it as 6 MI/H, which is the example that you saw earlier, or you could also do it as 6 MPH, but you have to have one or the other. All right, now it's your turn to try these. So what you're going to do for examples A and B is you're going to find the unit rate. Now, when you do these, you need to make sure you set them up as fractions first, because I want to see that you've written them as fractions, and then I want to see that you're simplifying them and giving me a final answer. Now, on your notebook paper, I do need to see that you've written out the problem. So what I'm writing here, I want to see that you have written it out, and then right next to the problem is where you can go ahead and do your work. Go ahead and pause your video and do examples A and B. All right, so here you can see what I did was I set up my first ratio as $300 over 6 hours. You don't have to have the word dollars in there since we included the dollar sign. I divided both numbers by 6 because remember your denominator has to be a denominator of 1 when you're done. So just divide by whatever that denominator is. And on this one we get $50 for every 1 hour. So you can see where I wrote my answer right over here, $50 per hour. On letter B, I did 220 miles over 8 gallons. I divided both numbers by 8, and I ended up getting 27.5 miles for 1 gallon. Now, you guys, when you're doing this, I did not show you the division work, but I am going to expect to see the division work for this problem for you guys to have done. So be sure that you do include that in there. And you see that I got a total of 27.5 miles per gallon. Now, you could have done it as 27.5 mpg. That's fine as well. But I wanted to show you that I left it as a rate over there, and I also wrote it out in words. All right, next example. On this one says here, it says find the unit price if it costs $2 for 8 juice boxes. All right, now on this one, sometimes people get confused which number goes on top. Is it the dollar amount that goes on top, or is it the number of boxes that go on top? So in this one, a good rule of thumb is pretty much however many pieces you're dividing it up into is what number is going to go on the bottom. So since we know it's two total dollars divided up into 8 boxes, we want to set it up as $2 divided by 8 boxes. And you can see that we wrote out the dollar sign and the word boxes. You're going to divide both numbers by 8, and the way you know which number to divide by is it's your denominator number. It has to be a 1, which means you do have to divide by that number. On this one, you end up getting 25 cents per juice box. All right, now it's your turn to try. So on this one here, it says find the unit price if a 4-pack of mixed fruit sells for $2.12. So I would like for you guys to go ahead on your paper, go ahead and label it example C, and I want you to set this up as a rate, and I want to see your division work on this one so I can see that you've actually worked out the full problem and not just copied my answers that I know a few people unfortunately do. All right, go ahead and pause your video and work on this now. All right, so here you can see I set it up as $2.12 over 4 mixed fruit, or a 4-pack. And when you divide both numbers by 4, you end up getting 53 cents for per pack of mixed fruit. So be sure to include a decimal point in the proper spot along with your dollar sign. All right, example 3. On this one here, it says the prices of 3 different bags of dog food are given in the table. Which size bag has the lowest price per pound rounded to the nearest cent? All right, you guys, let me talk to you about cent. Think about money. Money has 2 spots that come after a decimal point, not 3. So when you're doing this, if you've got more than 3 numbers after the decimal point, you have to round it to the nearest cent, which means to the nearest penny, which is the 2nd spot coming after the decimal point. So on these examples here, when you're looking at this area here, what they did is they started with the $49, which is this, divided it by 40, so they can figure out how much it costs per 1 pound. So they found unit rates of each of these. So yes, this one problem required 3 different things to be done to it, or 3, not different, 3 of the same things to be done to it, but basically you're dividing all of it. When you divide them all out, excuse me, you want to find which has the lowest price, which is the cheapest, which is the best buy. Sometimes they'll use the word best buy, so you want the one that is the cheapest. If you look here, the one in the middle, which is this guy right over here, is the cheapest at $1.17 per pound. So this type of problem does require you to do the work more than once on each part of it. So it does require a little bit of space and work to be done. All right, so now it's your turn to do this one. So go ahead, you're going to do the same thing. Now the numbers aren't too big, but if you look at this, there are 4 components to this, 4 parts. So you need to figure out how much the Nutty brand sells, as far like the Nutty peanut butter sells, as far as per ounce, how much grandma sells per ounce, B's, and Save-A-Lot, which means you're doing 4 separate problems where you're dividing and finding the unit cost for each of these. So when you're setting this up on your paper, I would really like for you to do it neatly, so this way when I come around to check your work, and also when you guys are going over this, start with Nutty and then do your work for it. Then you're going to go ahead and just make a nice list. There's grandma's, and then you're going to do your work for it. Then B's, and then Save-A-Lot, and so forth. All right, go ahead and pause your video now and see what you come up with when you come back. All right, and the winner for the cheapest happens to be grandma's. So hopefully you got that. That ends up being the smallest amount of the cheapest brand for peanut butter on this for this question, or peanut butter sales, excuse me, for this question. All right, so now we're on our last page, page 12, on our last example. This one reads, Lexi painted 2 faces in 8 minutes at the crafts fair. At this rate, how many faces can she paint in 40 minutes? Now, this shows you 2 different methods that you can go about doing this. So one has the picture method, and one has the finding the unit rate. I'll be honest with you, I really don't see many of you sitting there taking the time to draw tables and bars and everything like that, but either way, whatever you want to do, you can see this one. So the easiest way to do this is this. Figure out how long it takes her to paint one face, because it says here she paints 2 faces in 8 minutes. So if she does 2 faces in 8 minutes, to figure out how much how long it takes her, or how many faces she could paint in 1 minute. Okay, I know this seems weird. You're still going to divide by 8. Okay, remember, it's 2 faces, 8 minutes. We're breaking it up into per 1 minute. So I need to have that denominator of 1 minute. Well, when you divide this, 2 divided by 8, you're going to get 0.25. And I know basically it's just saying that she's painting 1/4 or 0.25% of a face. Well, this is important that we do it this way. So we know that in 1 minute, she could only paint 1/4 of one person's face. So now what you're going to do next is you're going to multiply by 40, because that's how much total time she has. So if in 1 minute, if she paints a face, or she paints 0.25 of a face, and then you're going to multiply by 40, because that's how many total minutes she has, you're going to end up getting, once you work all this guy out, you're going to end up getting 10 faces. That's how many faces Lexi can paint in the time that she has. All right, so what you're going to do now is you're going to do the guided practice. I would like for you guys to use a new sheet of paper for the guided practice, so go to your next available page. You are going to be doing questions numbers 1 through 3. So be sure to title your paper 1.1 guided practice, page 12, because I'm going to be looking for that. All right, guys, that's it for now, and we'll see you back in class.